and I'm the Director of Global Product Marketing at Zerto. And today we have a customer with us, Ben Travers from Acushnet Company, and he's going to be talking about his experience with Zerto. So before we move on from the first slide, a couple things I'd like to point out. First is our awards. So you can see we got Best of VMworld in 2011, Best of Show. And that really showed us that the market was really ready for our product because we had actually only been GA at that time for about 3 weeks. So it really showed that there was a clear need for the type of solution that we were able to deliver. And since then, we've continued to add awards, most recently with the Gartner Cool Vendor Award. And today, Ben is going to talk about his experience with Zerto, as I mentioned. Basically, an issue that I think probably many of you come up with. You get your applications configured and laid out across your servers and storage in a very specific way, and then you try to introduce BCDR, and you find out you have to redo that architecture all over again, and that's not really as fun for you. Okay, so here's our agenda. So I'll do speaker introductions in just 1 second, and I'll turn it over to Ben. And he will talk about his company, give you an overview of his environment, and then it'll come back over to me, and we'll talk about Zerto Virtual Replication, and we'll give you some ways that you can learn more about Zerto. And actually, one thing I did forget to mention before we go any further, in the panel that popped up for me on the right-hand side of the screen, I assume it's right-hand for you as well, you can type in questions, and we'll take those definitely at the end of the webinar. If we have the opportunity to take them throughout, we will do that as well, but definitely at the end. So if you have any questions at all, certainly feel free to type those in. Okay, so Ben is with Acushnet Company. He's a senior system administrator there. He has over 15 years of experience in IT, and you can see his key responsibilities that probably match what a lot of you on the phone have. So he's responsible for the configuration, management, and monitoring of storage, VMware vSphere, and the server administration. And he has a VCP4 certification as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ben.
Hello, my name is Ben Travers. I am the Senior System Administrator at the Acushnet Company. The Acushnet Company is actually Titleist, FootJoy, and Pinnacle. We're the largest golf manufacturing equipment. We're $1.5 billion in revenue. We have the #1 market share in golf balls, gloves, shoes worldwide. We have 3,000 employees worldwide. Primary channels of distribution are on-course pro golf shops, of course golf shops, sporting goods stores, mass merchants, corporate custom channel for logo and golf balls. Our main headquarters is located in Fairhaven, Massachusetts, but we have offices all over North America, Europe, South America, Asia, and Australia. All the golf balls that were basically made in Massachusetts, all the golf clubs are basically made on the West Coast. We're 95% virtualized. Our main headquarters runs right. We have licenses for 100 VMs to be protected, and that's what we expect to have by the end of the year. Right now, we only have 42 being protected right now. We're protecting everything: PeopleSoft, BlackBerry, Traveler, same time warehouse management, password manager database, and most of those applications have some type of SQL Server as a back end. Our primary storage at Fairhaven, our headquarters, is an EMC VNX, but we also have NS120s, AX4s, and we're utilizing Nutanix for our target in our Zerto Replication, which is in Colo in Boston, Mass. So we're replicating from Fairhaven to Boston. Can you switch the slide? All right, yeah, disaster recovery for us was basically non-existent. So when we decided to make it a priority, we hired a company to come in and do a business analysis, and what they came back with was, okay, it's going to be millions of dollars to replicate what you wanted to do. And the other piece that we found out is, oh yeah, we laid our data out on our primary storage array for best performance, and in order for that to fit into DR, we either need to change the way we lay out our disk and give up some performance, or we have to buy a lot more disk and change the way we lay out the disk, because we would have used recover point and we would have had to replicate at a LUN level as opposed to a virtual machine level. In fact, we actually sat with EMC and explained to them, look, we want to replicate at the virtual machine level, not the LUN level, which did not exist with them. It didn't exist anywhere really when we started talking about it as far as we knew. So I don't want to miss any of these points there. Oh yeah, EMC recover point comebacks. So I went to a VMware user group, sat through the Zerto Dog and Pony show, which you guys are doing now, and it was exactly what we were looking for. We wanted to replicate at the virtual machine level. We wouldn't have to relay out our data, and we didn't want to have to worry about where we were moving the data for primary storage, like storage vMotion. If you have a performance problem right now with a hot LUN or two hot LUNs and you want to move one of them off to a separate data store, you just use storage vMotion to move it off. And we didn't want to have to worry about a junior admin or somebody doing that and screwing up what was going on with the replication on the back end. With Zerto, you don't have to worry about that. He keeps track of where all the files are, replicates the data stores you tell it to the target data store at your DR site, and no matter where you move it in your production side, as long as you have the virtual machine helpers on there, everything will work fine, which was exactly what we wanted to do. We took it to our management. We decided, hey, this is something that we wanted to try. Literally, they came here and in one day, one-hour meeting, we bought, I think it was, our first purchase was only 15 licenses, set it up on a standalone server with a local data store installed on it at our DR site and started replicating and testing. And then from there, we went out and bought a Nutanix Nutanix storage array and moved that into Boston, moved the replication over to that, and we've just been expanding ever since to it. It's simple. I mean, that's the easiest way that I can describe it. It was easy. What else can I tell you about it? That's really it. The reason it makes sense for us too is we are basically like 95 to 97% virtualized. Everything is virtual. For us to do DR or have an application that needs a disaster recovery type replication, we're enforcing that it has to be virtual, so it will fit into our Zerto configuration. Yep, maximize hardware investment, deliver aggressive RPOs and RTOs, no limits on replicated environment, extend the benefits of virtualization for BCDR environment. I mean, I want to point out though that the aggressive RPOs and RTOs, I mean, we're talking 4 minutes for both of those, and usually less. I mean, it can be down to seconds if your pipe is fast enough, which ours is relatively quick. We have a 1 gig pipe replicating from Fairhaven to our Boston. So the RPOs and the RTOs are very, very aggressive. All right, can you go forward?
Okay, great. Thanks, Ben. So you highlighted a little bit on the performance, the RTOs being seconds and RPOs being minutes. Someone's asking more specifically, do you know what those are off the top of your head? I don't know the last time you've logged into the client. So
no, I can tell you this. Everything is within a minute, usually, except for we have one database that is a 3.5 terabyte SQL Server database that usually never falls below 2 to 3 minutes, with the exception of this. Our backup process is we dump it, we do a SQL dump to a flat file, and that's our backup. and then that backup file gets backed up to our tape drive. Well, when we spit that dump file out, it's anywhere between 1.5 terabytes to maybe a little bit bigger, which has to get re-replicated. So at least once a night when that backup is spit off, we fall behind. But it usually catches up within 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and then it goes right back. It's not our recovery time, it's just the length of time that we could go back, because you can go back 4 hours, is the default is how it's set. So we lose that ability to go back those 4 hours because it has to catch up. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. All right, there's a follow-up. What do you do to protect non-virtualized servers, and are those databases?
We don't protect non-virtualized servers at the moment. We used to. We would use log shipping. We have used Deduplication in the past, but our approach right now is anything Intel-based. You're going to be on a VMware virtual machine, and we're going to use Zerto to replicate you.
Okay, and then unless one comes in the next second, Ben, I think this will be the last question for you. What testing have you done to verify your replications?
All right, so there's two types of testing you can do in Zerto. There's what's called a bubble test, which is basically an isolation test. What you do is, same with any type of DR scenario, you create consistency groups of server that you want to be consistent when they come up. Well, you can run what's called a bubble test, which will bring all these servers in the consistency group up in an isolated bubble, which means no other networks can get to it. More importantly, he can't talk out to your production environment. So we brought every single application that we're replicating up in a bubble test, and we've had inside the bubble we place virtual machines to run the application so that we can get application people in to do test and verify. It's basically, you know, a data verification test. Now we've done that with every single application. We've also done a few live failovers with some of our internal or IT-based applications. We replicate our password manager, which is basically all the passwords for all the applications and all the servers. We've done a real live failover so that ran at our DR site for a day. Everybody used it, and then we replicated it back and failed it back. We've done that twice in, I think, yeah, twice, once a year since we've started doing it. So that's the only live test that we've done. On our DR side, we have really never, we really have never brought an application up in a DR scenario here. There's just been no need to do it.
Okay, and of course, Ben, more questions came in for you. I'm telling you, people want to hear from you, not from me.
Good.
Did you evaluate SRM assuming you are an ESXi shop?
Yes, we did, and in fact, when we did when the company came in and did the BRA, it was recover point. I mean, there was no option. That's what they told us. You use your recover point. And, you know, we would have. It was a done deal. It was just too expensive for us. And we run really, really lean. I mean, I am the only storage admin, VMware admin in the building. So, I mean, it would have been a lot of work to get that up and running, which is why it stalled and why we went out looking for other products and found Zerto. But yeah, recover point was what we looked at. It was what we were planning on doing, and it was in our mind the only option at the time.
And were you going to use SRM with that, Ben, or was it just recover point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then for the implementation of Zerto, did you do it, the implementation yourself, or were there professional services provided by Zerto?
Well, yes and no. I did it myself, but with Zerto on the phone. It took me, it was less than 45 minutes. I'm telling you, less than 45 minutes from the time that we hit setup on the first program to the time I started replication. It was 45 minutes. And it was just done through a WebEx with someone from Israel, I believe, from Zerto. and we just did it in 45 minutes one afternoon. Then I started replicating. Within another 40 minutes, I think it was, we had fully replicated that password manager database, and I was doing a bubble test within that, all with them on the phone. It was very, very, very simple.
Okay, and I think we have an EMC fan. Someone says, did you look at data domain?
No, we did not.
Nope. And then a question for me, does Zerto have any documentation on these tests talked about here? So yes, within, we have a couple white papers that talk about how we do the disaster recovery testing. And of course, we have much more detail in the admin guide, should you become a customer. But actually, in the presentation too, I'll be able to show you a picture of a report that can be an output from the disaster recovery testing as well. So, okay.
Setting up a test environment for this, though, is easy. I mean, literally, our first production implementation of this was a server that we had hanging around that had we attached a bunch of local disks to it. So, I mean, you step into this very, very cheap hardware-wise just to do tests. At least that's what we did.
Okay, great. So I wanted to take just a quick step back and kind of outline, the causes of downtime, just because, I know when I talk with customers, we talk about natural disasters, it's usually, oh, well, we don't live in a place where there are hurricanes or earthquakes or tornadoes. But if you look at what usually causes downtime, it's operational failures. So, the power goes out, IT hardware, and then, of course, there's human error, things like that are all higher than any of the natural disaster issues. And then the top impact of the disruption is loss of employee productivity. And with Zerto and our automated features, we're able to very quickly recover the application so that you can really reduce and or eliminate the loss of employee productivity. Okay. So you heard Ben talk a little bit about this already, actually. So when you have a virtualized environment, all the benefits and all the action is in the hypervisor. You have virtualized servers, you have virtualized switches, you have virtualized processes. So everything's moving along beautifully in the virtual environment. You're optimizing costs, you're making it easier to provision a server, and then you get to replication, and it's in the hardware layer. And you have to do exactly what Ben talked about, which is change the architecture of your application, which if you've made the investment in a high-end storage array, you don't really want to do that because you've architected it to get the most out of that investment, and now you have to move everything around just for BCDR. So Zerto, recognizing this issue, took replication from the hardware layer and pulled it into the hypervisor, so now you get alignment of your production strategy and your BCDR strategy. So with that, we have a virtual-aware solution. So what do I mean by that? It replicates VM and VMDKs, not LUNs, as Ben mentioned. It's a software-only solution. So it installs seamlessly into your existing infrastructure. Again, you don't have to reconfigure storage or applications or servers or your network. And it also scales beautifully because just as you add another ESX host, you'll add another appliance. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on that in the architecture. It's built for your production workloads, very aggressive service levels. So you heard Ben mention that, other than the time when they do the backups, they get very, very aggressive service levels in terms of their RPOs and RTOs. And then automation is so important. I think a lot of BCDR solutions, when you talk to a vendor, they talk a lot about, well, we replicate the data, and we do this with the data. But then, once the data gets thrown over to the target site, it's kind of up to the application team to make it useful. And that can take a lot of time as well. So with Zerto, we've automated the process of building VMs on the target site so that the end users and application owners can really get those applications available fast to simplify reduce the RTOs. Okay, so here we have the architecture overview. Very simple overview, and I say simple because here we have 2 sites, and Zerto can support multiple sites. And we have the Zerto Virtual Manager, which just plugs into vCenter Server. That is also available standalone through a web-based client. That's the only piece of software that you'll touch. So that will push out the virtual replication appliances as you saw in the animation. It'll take care of the upgrading, things like that. And the reason why we named it a virtual replication appliance is because it does not require ongoing maintenance, management, and babysitting like agents can. You'll also notice there's one per ESX host. This is not one per guest on the host. It's one per host. So you can see replicate from anything to anything, really a great saver for Ben and the team over at Acushnet. It's highly scalable. Just as you add another ESX host, you just add another virtual replication appliance. It's continuous block level replication, which delivers RPOs of seconds. So it's very, very close to synchronous, but it's not quite. It is async replication. The journal delivers point-in-time recovery, so those power outages and logical failures that can occur. The journal enables you to recover very, very quickly from that. It's 1 hour up to 5 days worth of data. You'll get a recovery point every couple of seconds. So if at 4 o'clock, you patched a server and it corrupted something, you can just roll the server back to 359 in 52 seconds and undo that patch. And then we also have some compression and throttling to make sure we're optimizing the bandwidth that's available as well. So application protection groups, very important, because you want to make sure that you have that consistency, as Ben mentioned. So for any application, you can group the VMs together and ensure that no matter where they are in the environment, they'll be protected the same way. So again, like Ben didn't want to have to worry about kind of a newbie moving, storage remotioning something to a different host or moving something along and then have it break replication on the back end. These virtual protection groups will make sure that doesn't happen. So this gives you consistency across the VMs as well with right order fidelity so that you can, in fact, recover. Okay, so we talked a lot about the data, as I mentioned, and then this is where a lot of replication tools kind of fall short with no automation for failover, failback, or recovery. This can be a very manual process and a very long process. But with Zerto, once you fail over and you need to build the VMs, you just hit the big arrow. You'll see that in the GUI in a second. And it just builds the VMs at the target site in a matter of minutes. So this is on a per VPG basis. You can configure things like boot order. So like the database server will come up first, then the application server, then the web server. You can re-IP if needed. And this is where you'll set up that test network, as Ben mentioned. So you'll have, okay, when I'm doing a live failover, use these IP addresses. When I'm doing a test, use this separate kind of isolated network. Click to test anytime. So this testing can be executed during business hours. While you're doing testing, replication is still occurring. Your environment is still protected. And in the off chance, something happens, the power goes out and you need to recover from that, you can stop the test immediately and do an actual live failover. And then offsite cloning, so you can clone the entire infrastructure at the target site, make use of that data, use it for test and development. So now you have a very real and very recent copy of your production workload to do development. Something that we recently announced in June is our offsite backup feature. So it's something that is kind of a trend in the industry just overall, where you see disaster recovery and backup kind of converging into one product, and it really makes a lot of sense. So with Zerto, what we do is we take a backup off the already replicated data. So this dramatically reduces the impact to production applications because all the backup infrastructure that was on the production site is now removed. You can now recover in other locations, including clouds, and you can exceed retention requirements. So we have an algorithm which will automatically manage your long-term retention of your data. So and it's set up to maintain daily copies for a week, then it goes to weekly copies for a year, and then, weekly copies for a month, and then monthly copies for a year. And it helps you easily identify gaps because the offsite backup is set up just like DR at the VPG level. So you can see, gee, does this application have backup? I haven't configured that yet. Does it need it? No, maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. So you have that, real analysis and be able to easily identify gaps in your disaster recovery and your backup and your data protection strategy. So workflow automation, really great feature. For many orchestration products, once you decide, oh boy, this is it, I got to fail over. So you fail over to your target site, but it automatically shuts down your production environment. If that failover doesn't work because you don't have right order fidelity, you don't have consistency groups, something else happened, there's another corruption at your target site because you don't have enough historical points, and you're like, oh, okay, I need to undo this. That's not so easy with a lot of other products. With Zerto, you can just say, okay, I'm going to commit this failover in 30 minutes. So it'll start the failover process. It'll start to build the VMs on the target site, and it won't shut down your production environment for that 30 minutes. So you can say, geez, my target site's having the same kind of disaster, something else is happening there. Stop the failover and keep your production site up and running because you can maybe get by with it for a little longer. So great feature. Zerto's the only product actually that has this feature. So simple management from anywhere, as I mentioned, we have the vSphere plugin, browser-based management. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner, that's the arrow, so it's set to test, which is why it's blue. If you put that little slider up and go to live, it turns to red. So you kind of know that, okay, you're about to do something serious. Enhanced alerting was added in 3.5 also. So not only is it like, hey, something's happening, it says, hey, something's happening, and this is probably what it is, and this is probably how you can fix it. So just a great way to enable troubleshooting to move along a lot faster. And also we have a link right to customer support at Zerto, so you can just pop that up and then type in a question and have that sent off. So as I mentioned, we do support multiple sites, and not just multi-site replication, but also true multi-tenancy. So you can replicate from several sites to one shared infrastructure. So that helps you reduce costs overall. Great for large enterprises, well, great for any enterprise really, is in reducing costs. We found our cloud providers also like this feature. Oops, wrong way. It's bidirectional replication, so we have some customers who have like 2 warm sites, and when one goes down, they just have to fail over 50% of the infrastructure, and they'll just have the whole 100 running in site A, and then site B will be dark, and vice versa. With other solutions, they don't do bidirectional. It's A to B, and that's it. We have no strict latency requirements, so you can replicate certainly for Haven to Boston, but we do have customers replicating from Texas to Dubai, Waltham, Massachusetts to London, California to Florida. We do have local support, so we can replicate within a single vCenter. And as I mentioned, we do have the ability to work with cloud providers. Okay, comprehensive reports. So many reports here. The audit report is probably the one that's the most interesting. That's kind of the big one that you see right there on the right. It has a column where it says green. Where it's green, it says success. So that's the report that you're going to get after you run a disaster recovery test. It's going to tell you exactly how long the test took. It's going to show you every step it executed and how long it took that step. So, I have a customer out of Philadelphia who knows it's going to take him 2 minutes and 43 seconds to recover SharePoint because he runs this test, and that's the average he gets. So he's like, at most it's going to take us 3 minutes. So he's able to give that SLA back to the business. Detailed resource planning, so you can look at what a VM is consuming on the source and target site, just to give you a little bit better idea of what you're going to need to buy, the next year or the following year. Of course, we do performance charts. And then lastly, we provide a backup report. So if you choose to use the offsite backup feature, it'll say, give you details at the VPG level that the backup's executed properly. Okay, so this is what Ben was looking at using storage replication with SRM. It's this really ugly, complex process. If anything in here goes wrong, it can put you in jeopardy and put you at risk. So with Zerto, so here we go, complex, manual, and flexible, those ugly red words. So with Zerto, we take away a lot of those steps and make it a lot easier. It's funny, when I find that I present in front of trade shows and I'm up there myself, and people just, I can tell that their eyes glaze over when I say how easy it is. But then that's why I think it's so impactful to have a customer, because install in 45 minutes. I mean, it's that fast. It really is that easy to use. So we've talked a lot about private cloud BCDR, so replication between 2 sites. Also, if you want to give a cloud provider a try, certainly we have a great network of cloud service providers. We can do disaster recovery as a service, keep the production site for yourself, replicate to their cloud. And then if you find you get comfortable with your cloud provider and you'd like to give them kind of an application that is difficult to manage, I'm sure everyone can think of one that they would love to not have to manage. Give it to your cloud provider. Let them do production and DR, and they'll replicate between their couple of target sites. And we have over 150 cloud service providers that we work with. So in summary, virtual aware, replicating VMs, that's what you're looking at in a virtual environment. You're looking at virtual machines. That's the level that we operate in. Tier 1 enterprise class, again, very aggressive service levels. Application level protection and recovery, because end users say, I can't get into Oracle, I can't get into SQL. They don't say, I can't get into LUN number 08A21. It's at the application level, and that's where we operate. Scalable, software-only solution, so no hardware dependencies, and just very, very simple, very, very easy to use. So we're going to take a few more questions. If you want to contact me, there's my contact information. Actually, I thought I put Ben first. I guess I didn't, Ben. So Ben's right there in the middle. If you have any questions for him, I know. And then also our silent partner. So Shannon Snowden's our Senior Technical Marketing Architect. If anyone asks any really technical questions and Ben and I can't answer them, you will hear from Shannon. And I see a couple here already that I'm like, I know I can't answer that. So let's see. We left off at the, okay. So I can actually answer this question. So will Zerto be targeted to OpenStack KVM Orchestrator? So we are going to be adding new hypervisors. Actually, this year we're going to be adding Hyper-V, and that'll be in the second half of this year. And then after that, we're not sure exactly what is next. KVM is on the list. Other public clouds are on the list. So we're not sure exactly what's going to be after that. Okay, so here's a question for you, Shannon, although Ben, you might know too. What guest OSs are supported for IP reconfiguration?
Hey there, this is Shannon. But we support both Windows and Linux, so really what you need is just the VM tools running in the guest, and then we're able to do all the re-IP addressing.
Okay, and Shannon, here's another configuration question. Is the appliance on a small host with, say, 10 VMs the same configuration as on a larger host with, say, 30 or 40 VMs? So does the VRA look different? Yeah,
the VRA is just a small Linux appliance, and the options you have, you can go from 1 to 3 gig of RAM, and we have in the admin guide and the install guide the sizing recommendations based off the number of volumes you think you're going to be supporting there. So it's a very simple toggle of how much RAM you want to put on the VRA.
Okay. And then I can answer this question. Can you set different retention levels for different protection groups or VMs? So yes. So at the virtual protection group, that's where you configure your journal in terms of the continuous data protection. And then also that's where you would set up your offsite backup configuration as well. Can you replicate a VM to 2 sites? So kind of. Right now, and Shannon will probably add to this, so right now we could replicate to 1 site, but then you can take an offsite backup, and you can pull that offsite backup into any site where Zerto is. And Shannon, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, you're right on. The one point I would make, the VRAs, if you recall the architecture slide Jen showed, the VRA appliances, the VPGs that are on those with the application affinity groups, that same VRA can be both bidirectional, and it can pair and talk to multiple sites. So even though we can't split a VM and send it to 2 different sites at the VM level, from different VPGs, the same virtual replication appliance can replicate different VPGs between different sites. And then, as Jen was saying, there is, with the offsite backup, you can effectively almost domino to a third site where you have the bidirectional failover, failback of a DR scenario. But then if you're doing offsite backup with that VPG, then you could use the SMB target as a, you could take the package, the backup package, and pull it into a third site with a Zerto virtual manager that has never seen the package before. So in effect, you could spin up a completely new site from the backup packages that offsite backup creates.
Okay, great. And then a question on licensing. So not surprised to get this one. So it is licensed by Protected Virtual Machine. And we do have a minimum base package. It's 15 virtual machines. And not surprising that Ben mentioned he thinks we bought 15 the first package. I'm sure you did, Ben. So that starts with 15 VMs, 1 year premium maintenance is just under $14,000 for the 15 VMs. And someone asked, is it possible to get a list of cloud providers? Absolutely. If you go to our website, you'll see our cloud providers there. And if you don't think you find what you're looking for, send me an email, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with the team that manages that. Oh, and it is a perpetual license. Sorry, it's a perpetual license per protected virtual machine. And so Shannon, a question for you. Is there a limit to the number of virtual protection groups?
Well, not really from a practical standpoint. The limitations you fall into would be the relationship with the vCenter that the ZVM is talking to, the Zerto Virtual Manager. We like to stay around 5,000 VMs and about 500 volumes per the VRA. So, as you can see, we've got a pretty high ceiling on those things. It accommodates most environments.
Okay, and someone says, can you run scripts pre or post recovery as part of the plan? And yes, you can do both. That's actually, you can do that at the VPG level. And Ben, I was wondering if you run any pre or post plan scripts.
No, we don't. We don't need to. I mean, it does everything we need. It changes the IP address. It reconfigures everything that we want. We didn't have a reason for it. The only thing that we did do, excuse me, was we set the virtual machines to register themselves with DNS so that we didn't have to use the script to change the DNS address in the DNS server.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, that's a great endorsement again.
Hey, I do have a question, though, for Shannon. So,
okay.
What's a recommended amount of service to have in a single VPG? Is there too many for a single VPG?
Well, we do have a bit of a guidance on that because I helped write it, actually. So it depends on how fast you want the recoveries to happen, because if you have a lot of VMs in a single VPG, then they will recover faster than multiple VPGs with the same number of VMs. And that comes into play because Zerto has a throttling mechanism in how many it asks vCenter to power up concurrently. Now you can tweak that. You can actually set it to be less forgiving of vCenter. But if you don't want to go into that type of tweak, then normally what you're going to do is sort of keep the application affinity groups. You know, I put these together for a reason. But if you're just looking at tiers and a lot of cloud providers will maybe go very few VPGs per customer, and they'll have a lot of VMs in them. But the impact is really not a Zerto thing as much as it's how many concurrent VMs you're trying to spin up on the vSphere environment through vCenter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Shannon, here's another question for you, which actually lines up with a piece of content we're working on. Are backups deduplicated?
Well, it's funny you should ask. I was finishing up. We were doing the wrap up on a paper that talks about how we work with and what we recommend. Since most people have it anyway, is Windows Server 2012 R2 deduplication. We found some pretty remarkable deduplication numbers so far. We're seeing around 80 to 90% disk savings just using Windows Server 2012. So built into to our product right now, we're not doing it, but our first target is an SMB share for those packages, for those backup packages. So obviously, if you don't have a storage that's doing deduplication, it's most people have a Windows Server in their environment somewhere, being a file server for the most part. And if not, the deduplication savings alone would buy the license for a Windows Server to do it in most conditions. So, and it also fits in very well with sort of that software-defined data center, where you're getting your replication, your orchestration, and then your deduplication's all done at the software level using the Windows Server 2012.
Okay, great. And has Zerto been tested with a Citrix VDI environment? So I'm assuming that you're running vSphere as the hypervisor. And so with that assumption, I will have Shannon answer the question.
Well, yeah, it would be Citrix, the Zen App running on vSphere, and then the actual VMs, the server side, of course, we're going to support. The VDI environment, though, depending on how Zen App is spinning up the VMs, the desktops, we have different customers that approach it different ways. It's a much longer conversation than this. We probably ought to follow up on that question, Jen.
Okay. So yeah, if that person who asked that question, I would send a note to Shannon, because he's going to be able to give you the information that you're looking for.
Yeah, we'll give you some. There's different approaches to it.
Okay. Oh, and then someone asked, I'm sorry, I missed this question. This one was asked a little earlier. Do we work with mixed VMware virtual and non-virtual environments? So we do not support physical environments. We do, however, work in a mixed VMware environment. So what I mean by that is if you have vSphere 4 and vSphere 5 or vSphere 5.5, we can replicate between those different versions of the hypervisor. And also if you have vCloud Director. So if you have vCloud Director in one site and vSphere 5.5 in another site, we're able to replicate between those different versions of vSphere. And so that was actually all of our questions. Always when I say that, 4 more come in. So I'm going to keep on talking just for another minute to see if we get any more. But Ben, do you have any other questions from Shannon? Don't put him in the hot seat too much.
No.
Okay.
I do have one observation listening to Ben's presentation. When's the last time you heard your DR environment described as simple? That doesn't happen. That's usually the last thing that happens in any environment, including virtualized environment, because it's usually the most difficult one to get done, politically and financially. And having it done in 45 minutes and getting VMs protected and described as simple is pretty amazing.
The funny thing is when they ask to schedule a test, and once you convince them and you walk them through how to actually do a test inside the bubble, that the second time we did it, we didn't plan. We just came in one morning, all decided we had time, and we did the test. I mean, when's the last time you did a DR test that you decided at 8:30 in the morning and you ran it at 10 in the afternoon? You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
Usually has to be scheduled over months and months.
Yes. Well, the environment of DR has lagged so far behind what's inside the data center walls of a virtualized infrastructure. It's so easy. You vMotion things around. DRS is taking care of things, HA. But then as soon as you add the need for, I need to get this off-site, it becomes Stone Age again. You're looking at hardware. You're trying to figure out, how we're going to sequence this. we're going to have to tie a bunch of things together with scripts or with multiple pieces of software, and this just takes all that away and gets you back toward what virtualization got you in the first place.
Right. I mean, I could honestly say we probably wouldn't have a DR, per se, environment if it wasn't for this yet. We'd still be just lugging tapes off-site and hoping to recover them at the other side.
Well, great. Ben, thank you so much for your time, too. I actually told the truth. No other questions came in, which is totally fine. I know. But thank you, Ben, for your time today. I think it's just so much more powerful for people to hear from our customers, so thank you.
No problem.
And Shannon, as always, thank you for bailing us out on the tough questions.
No problem.
Okay, great. Everyone, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.